Fez, what do you got?
I got very similar. We got a theme of fade the teams at the top. Eagles, under 11.5. The more I look at this, the more I like it. So I'm looking at the Eagles, last year, 14-3, really dominant, played very well. They only outscored their opponents by 130 points. So they were like a 12.3 win team based upon that. All right. They went 6-1, and their games decided by 7 or fewer points. So really, they weren't a 14-win team. They're about a 12.5 win team.
Well, hold on a second. Mm-hmm. There's another way to look at this, right? Because the Pythagorean approach is one way. The other way would be the pregame.com proprietary win shares.
I like that. Let's look at that.
So, Mackenzie, how's the win share look for Philly, for example?
You want regular season or?
Just regular season.
All right, 1 second.
And if I recall, they had the very best in the league. Because remember, they were in control of these games. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes in the second half, they let them kind of back in it. But there was really no chance of losing. Kind of like you may recall the Lions, I think, early in the year, right?
38-35 when they're up by 100. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great example.
So I think in general, the Philly was really good. And let's not forget, too, Hurts was out. What was it, 3 games?
2, I think 2. I could be wrong. Could be 2.5.
You remember?
2 games.
It was 2. Okay.
I believe 2, yep.
Huh. All right, that sounds right. All right, still, I mean, they lost the Cowboys on one of those, right?
Yep.
So
in their fourth quarter win share, they won 14 games. They were expected to win 14 games, highest in the league.
All right, but just to be clear, by our fourth quarter win share, they effectively won 14.0 games?
Or 13.9.
Okay, and actually, I got the sheet in front of me now. So number 1, Fez, Philly. Number 2, KC. Number 3, Buffalo. Number 4, San Fran. Number 5, Cincy. Baltimore, which was a surprise there. Dallas. So it's the best teams in the league.
Yes.
And it said Philly was the best of all of them.
Yes. So, like I said, I'm willing to meet you in the middle here. You're saying that Philly should have won 14 games. Mm-hmm. I'm saying if I use these other criterions, Pythagorean, close wins, it's more like 12.3. Make them a 13-win team last year. Okay. So you are giving me 7 tenths, and I'm giving you 9 tenths. And our rationale makes more sense. I think maybe 13.5 would be fair. 13.3.
All right, we'll
13.
Okay.
We'll call them. So they went 13.3 last year.
All right.
Okay. All things being equal, I ask RJ Bell, if a team wins 13.3 and the year before they were just a slightly above average team, what would you set their over under for the next year?
I mean, at highest would be 12.5, probably 12 though.
Yeah, I'd go 11.5. We're in the ballpark.
And losing both coordinators.
So,
wow. I think the offensive coordinator is a problem. I think the defensive coordinator is probably a good thing.
Mm.
So called 11.75. Let me get in the middle.
All right.
Okay, so we're at 11. So okay, and now we lose our coordinators, but we have a good draft. People are bullish about the Eagles.
At least they have good equity.
So I'm at 11.75. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at the schedule.
This idea of the good draft and everything, that had no movement from that.
Well, I'm giving them. I'm saying because I was at 11.5, and so I made.
Okay.
All right. So, and also remember, Philly was at 11. I was the guy that said, you know what, Philly's at 11. Everyone's going to bet over. Wait, take your time. Okay. They're going to bet over, and we're like, well, 11's a high number. Like they're going to bet over. I said, if you like Philly over, bet over 11 now. Well, now it's 11.5.
We heard you. Say it.
All right. Well, now it's 11.5. So there's been a huge move. It's a half game is worth a ton. At this level, it's probably worth 60 cents on or off for half on 11, maybe 55 cents. All right. I looked at the schedule, and it's much harder this year than last year.
Okay.
So they had
That's your analytical analysis?
They got to play the AFC South, which was total cupcake, and they swept the AFC South. They went 4-0. So now they get the AFC East, which is a nightmare, by comparison.
I agree.
They have to play at Kansas City.
So Philly and Buffalo, that's a loser right there. Go ahead.
They have to play at Kansas City instead of hosting Pittsburgh. That's how, I mean.
Yeah.
And their other 2 field games versus the NFC, they were at Arizona and they played New Orleans last year, and this year they get Minnesota and Tampa Bay. So it's a little bit harder.
Whoa. This year's harder?
Yeah, well, they got to play at Arizona last year. Arizona was god-awful. Arizona's a 4-win team last year.
But what I'm saying is, what do we project for Tampa this year?
6 or 7.
Okay.
That's their season win number.
And what do we? I mean, we're saying Tampa isn't better than last year. Projected wasn't better than Minnesota.
No, I'm saying Minnesota It's projected to be better than New Orleans was last year by a little bit.
I don't think so.
And Tampa Bay is projected to be better than Arizona was last year by a little bit.
Listen, if that's your aim, I think this is an example you keep taking till someone smacks your hand. I think you should just call that a toss-up and accept it.
No way I'm calling that a toss-up. No, I mean
the Saints were in a lot of power rating top 10s last year.
They're the same as Minnesota. You can't say the Saints
Well, that's just not true.
You can't say the Saints last year. They're power.
Well, hold up.
Yeah.
Let's just do this. We have a quantifiable, not just gut feeling, in which we had 4 different power rankings, if I recall right. Kevin Cole.
Yep.
All right. So what's that number tell us?
So the Saints were +1, the 9th best team in the league by our numbers. Vikings were -1. They were 20th best.
It's irrelevant what the Vikings were last year. It's what they are this year, and their season wins 8.7.
Okay. So is 8.7 the 8th highest in the league?
No.
So they're worse than New Orleans, or maybe all those guys, Kevin Cole, or Football Outsiders don't know what they're talking about. Who makes up that composite?
Kevin Cole, Neflo, Football Outsiders, and pregame.com.
There you go.
All right, I'll accept that. New Orleans is a little bit better than Minnesota, but Tampa Bay is better than Arizona.
All right, maybe.
All right, so
We'll see. Then you guys take Tampa
Under.
Under, okay. All right.
All right, at Kansas City versus Pittsburgh is a huge,
So
more
let's just
difficult.
say they had one of the easiest schedules last year.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
Call it 3/4 of a game. Okay, they had a very easy schedule last year, and this year they have a much more difficult schedule versus last year. Okay.
Okay. So Mackenzie, just looking at projected wins. Find me, as Fez keeps talking here, find me what their rank is. Because they were like 31, and I agree with you, from 1st to 32nd is about 3 points. So whatever that ratio is from 31 to where they are, we'll attribute that. It's probably going to be around a game, 1.5.
Yeah, so I went from 11.75 wins. I docked it with the schedule difference to 11. I think the opener was good at 11. I think this is irrational exuberance to 11.5. I'm getting the hook. I'm going under the 11.5.
Yeah, I think there's probably value. But real quick, I said something wrong here. So 3 points is what it will be from 1st to 32nd typically. That's an average that I've seen. So now 17 games, it's going to be 30 and then 21, so 51 points, right?
Yeah.
And
35 is worth a win.
Yeah. So okay.
So win and a half.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's a 1.5 if it's the whole 3 points.
Yeah.
Now, but they're not going from 32nd to like second. They're going to go Yeah.
It's just the delta between the two. And another aspect, and maybe
but you're only assuming 0.75.
Yes.
All right. So you're saying it's only about half.
Yeah.
Okay. I think they actually have a harder schedule than halfway, so it'd be even more.
And another aspect that I really don't like about their schedule is they have a stretch in the middle of the year. They play 9 games, and 8 of the 9 are really good teams. They play Dallas twice. They play Kansas City. They play Buffalo. They play Miami. They play at Seattle. They only have 1 game against a team that's not projected to win 9 games. They play 1 game against Washington. So during that stretch, I think they're going to go 5-4. And that leaves them no margin to get over unless they sweep early and late of the year.
Let me ask you a question. Of all the serious bettors the 5-figure type bettors and 6-figure, how many of them do touchy-feely things, and how many have a model? How many have a algorithm that says, this scenario you just laid out is worth X?
You know what? The guys I know, a lot of them are touchy-feely and artistic. You'd be surprised.
But I'm saying amongst the 5-figure bettors. Not the guys that are making 85.
I know guys that are like betting huge, and they do very much things like this, where they look at it and they say, "I'd much rather play Cupcake, really good team. Cupcake, really good team, than get 4 cupcakes and then."
To go back to heuristic, how do you integrate that into your other analysis? It's like you have to be able to quantify it.
Yes, and I cannot.
And I don't even think you can define it.
And I cannot quantify.
Like define, like, what is the scenario? You don't like a lot of tough games in a row?
That's correct.
Okay, but that means you're not playing. So you're saying the difference is if you're playing alternating tough. Let's say you have 8 or 9 tough games and 8 easy games, or some variation.
Yes.
You'd rather it be one than the other, oscillating back and forth.
Yes.
And how much is that worth?
Quarter of a game. I'm estimating, obviously.
You think?
Well, I mean, do you disagree with my premise, though?
I'm gonna. I don't know. I think sometimes I think playing like 6 or 7 tough games in a row is tough, no doubt. I think sometimes having like 2-week periods that you say you're going to hunker down is not a problem at all.
And they do have 6 consecutive games against teams, like I said, lined every one of them 9 wins or more, and the easiest game's at Seattle. It's really difficult.
Okay, so they actually have a Philly in 2023, the 10th easiest schedule. So let's take away a third of what you thought you were taking. So it's more like 0.5.
Half again?
Yeah, it's
okay.
right or a little less.
So we go from 11.75 to make it 11.25.
Now, where do you add in the Hertz factor? As in, this guy has trended up every year. He had his most affirming, enabling game. If there's any doubt, if he looked in that mirror and had any doubt about himself, he can't anymore.
I agree.
Right? So that's got to be worth something.
Yes, but remember, Philly pretty much converted every 3rd and 4th and 1 with that.
And there's no rule
pushing
against
forward.
it this year.
And there's no rule against it this year, but that's got to be more prone to injury with that. I mean, he's got a nose tackle kicking him in one direction.
You're hoping for the injury.
He's got his running backs pushing him forward. That can't be like something that's good for the health of a quarterback.
Well, apparently it seems like Philly's on top of these things.
Then
right?
why is everyone else not on top of it?
They don't have a quarterback that squats 600 pounds.
Yeah, and we'll see.
Why can't they put a backup in to do it?
We'll see how many of them do it this year.
That's a good point.
I mean, they were practicing it all off season.
And I think we may well see like not the quarterback. I think we may well see converted tight ends to be quarterbacks.
Why aren't we training, having running backs practice getting snaps under center?
Well, it seems like if you fumble even twice a year, it wouldn't be.
And the problem with putting the running back is then all of a sudden, then we always say you got to guard these guys. Like no, you don't. Not when the running back's taking the snap. Yeah. You don't have to.
It's a quarterback. You do have to have somebody guarding the wide receiver that splits out wide.
I think that the re-signings that Howie Roseman was able to pull off warrants an upgrade from where we were at 11. I think it's probably a little out of line. So my gut feeling is you probably have, I don't know, a third of a game advantage here, which is still, upwards of what?
20 cents?
Yeah.
If I'm correct that at the highest ends, remember, a half
I'm
on
an optimist on Philly, too. So, I mean, I think even my optimism, I don't think this number, if I had to play it, I'd play under.
Do you believe in the hangover after the losing Super Bowl team hangover?
It's a free roll.
It's like the last 10 years, they've averaged 10 wins per season, which isn't bad. It's just not.
Well,
it's all versus expectations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they made this. We had data on that where that whole thing reversed itself, right, Mackenzie?
Yeah, I could put that back up.
It seems like it has over the past couple of years. I mean, look at what the Bengals did last year, right?
Even the year,
the Chiefs.
Even the year Atlanta lost to New England, I think, although they had a disappointing year, I still think if I recall, they landed on their number the next year.
Remember, they had the ball inside the 10 against Philly in the first round of that playoffs, and then Carson Wentz, Matt
Ryan.
Well, no, I mean Matt Ryan was Atlanta's, but when Nick Foles brought them to the Super Bowl, it was that year, right? So Atlanta was minus money with 2 minutes left to
win the game.
Yeah. So
Atlanta finished 10-6 that year.
So I think Mackenzie's going to throw this up at some point. Okay, so looking at this, and we go back to 2006. You know something? Let's look at 12 on. What do we got from 12 on? Because I'm a big believer that 12 starts the modern era. And we're looking at Super Bowl losers. And
it's actually almost exactly the same.
Oh,
10.3 average wins, 10.7 since 2012 average win total.
All right, so they have 7 overs, 7 unders, 2 pushes during this whole era going back to 06. So it looks like there's no real effect.
Yeah. There clearly was back in the 90s.
5-5 since 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
You need because I played under. I'm going to look for the edge. I would say 10.3 versus 10.64 is not insignificant.
There you go. You got it. You got it, baby.
I mean, it's 30 cents.
Well, I guess to some degree, you only get paid. There's when there's 16 occurrences and it's 500. It's 500. I'm not sure I fully understand. Like at the end of this NFL talk, I'm going to show a study I did on home field advantage. And the funny thing is, in home field advantage, Well, I'll wait on this, but let's just say, let's put a pin in the idea of win-loss versus net margin and see, and we can see how it works here. And I'm starting to be confused by it, to be honest.
You know, one thing that really stands out when I look at that data is how rarely this play loses by more than a smidge. And I think if we go back 15 years, there's a couple really good teams, but the teams that go over are going over by like one game.
Okay. Well, because they're going to be higher totals.
Certainly, so there's some of that. But even saying that, it seems like the Super Bowl loser is not winning 15 games like they're eking over what oftentimes.
By the same token, if he would have arbitrarily left out 06, because let's be honest, who was that quarterback? Rex Grossman.
Rex is our quarterback.
Is not particularly indicative of much. Is they were minus 3 games there, and you take that out, all of a sudden it goes where it's positive. No doubt.
Yes.
So
small samples are difficult.
Yeah, I would say whatever extreme phenomenon there was is not the case now.
But all things being equal, gun to my head, I want to go under versus over.
We know.
And you have every right to do that. And
it wasn't even part of my handicap.
It's official. It's official.
So
especially with NFC teams with more red balls than blue balls.
Exactly.
Exactly. This is another red. It's a marble. It's not a ball. It's a marble.
And listen, no one likes blue balls, so I agree. Moving on.
Who's sticking their hand in the urn is what I want to know anyway.
Blue balls.
What is it?
The Undertaker?
Yeah.
Moving on. Scott Seidenberg, what's your pick?
I'm utilizing my pass this week.
I think that's smart. That's smart.
I already have 3 teams, so
And you've been researching
my
baseball
pass.
for hours and days and weeks.
That's true. All right, Mackenzie.
I was going to utilize my pass.
That's fine.
All right.
Mackenzie also has 3 teams. So now everybody has 3. RJ, you're the only one that's done. You are complete with your 4.
Straight A's, baby. So let's give a rundown here. Who got what?